Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Gabert, the scientist turned mindset and high performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. Today's guest is someone who has been decades ahead of the curve on longevity, peak performance, and the future of human optimization. Oz Garcia has advised A-list celebrities, Fortune 100 CEOs, and world-class performers on how to extend their health span, reverse biological aging, and build resilience in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable. He's a best-selling author, a pioneer in functional health, and a visionary voice on the next era of biohacking. Those are all topics I love, so I can't wait to hear more. Welcome, Oz, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
Thanks, Claudia. I'm very pleased.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this. Now, Oz, before we dive into the high-tech frontiers of biohacking, I want to understand the human behind the expertise. So why have you dedicated your life to health optimization? What personal story got you started on this path?
The origin story begins in the 1970s. I was a kid of the 60s, and with everything that we understand about that generation, it was an era where many of us grew our hair long. We behaved in a very countercultural manner. And by the 1970s, many of us were interested in re-entering the mainstream. So the hair went off, the bad behavior went out the window, and we were interested still in ways that you could adapt your conscience. How could you be a better human being? So the value systems went through a transformation for people in my generation in the 70s, and I got real interested in mindfulness practices. I got real interested in running when very few people were doing it. By 1979, I was already racing, and I did my first New York City Marathon. And that provoked a crisis for identity. I wanted to know more about how to be the best human being that I could be. And that was in an era where few people were asking those questions. You got to remember, there was no worldwide internet. There were no cell phones. So you would go to a library if you were interested in finding out about nutrition. You would seek out different courses in universities that offered that kind of information on, let's say, supplementation. And this is very early on. Supplements then were not anything in the way that they are today. And I started to build a way of thinking and understanding to actually begin hacking my body very early on with now, in retrospect, were very crude tools, but they got me across the last 4 decades.
So can you share what were some of these early realizations that you had that allowed you to really to start designing your health rather than just, making it work and winging it?
The information was in the hands of very few people that dealt with the subject matter of personal improvement, certainly when it came to nutrition. So there were 3 primary thinkers when it came to nutrition, let's say, at least alternative practices in nutrition. Robert Atkins was one of them. He was a very early proponent of a high protein diet and no carbohydrates. Michio Kushi, who created the macrobiotic diet, which was practically vegetarian, but primarily cooked. And then there was Hippocrates Institute, and they dealt with vegetarian, but raw vegetarian practices and juicing. So I tried them all. And I kind of fell behind macrobiotics. And along with that, fasting was a very young distinction. There was a book called The Miracle of Fasting by Paul Bragg. Paul Bragg's products are still in the market. For instance, apple cider vinegar, Bragg amino acids. These are still viable products within the current health market. But back then, very few people knew who Paul Bragg was. So in The Miracle of Fasting, he advocated for water fasting several days at a time till you could finally learn how to do a week on water. And I kind of thought this would be really cool, along with running and macrobiotics, depending on at what point you got a hold of me. And they all did something to my thinking. Each one made me aware of biologically how well a human being could feel, how well a human being could perform. My sleep improved, my thinking improved, my moods improved, my energy and my power improved. So these were the early exposures that I got until a book entitled Life Extension came out, I think in 1981. It was published by two scientists from MIT, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. And I still have the original book itself. It's completely yellowed and falling apart. But for anybody back then in the early 1980s that was interested in being a better human being through science, they're the ones that actually took the conversation forward.
Interesting. Especially also the conversation about running and fasting. I find really interesting because those are both, I would say, interventions that are very catabolic. So if you do the long runs, you suppress the whole mTOR pathway. So it's all you you can lose a lot of your muscle as well during that. And if you layer fasting on top of that, that sounds like it could get dangerous, especially for people as we get older, right? You don't want to lose your muscle mass. What are your thoughts on that?
You don't do both at once. It's not like you could fast 7 days and go running, right? So there was a time for everything. Running is an essential feature of the human body, given who we are as animals, as primates, and how we evolved, being gatherers, being hunters, being predators. We're both predatory and prey. We look like lunch to many other predators. So being a runner through evolution, if you go back 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, it was important for you to be able to run and run well. Being bipedal, the fact that you could stand upright and move for very long distances, you could often outlast your prey and kill it. And in a competitive environment for calories, where if you saw, let's say, an antelope several hundred yards in front of you, you could bet that there were probably an additional several hundred eyeballs looking at the same animal as a potential source of food. So human beings became very adaptive in terms of how we moved our bodies. Running was critical and essential. And the reward for being a runner wasn't only getting something to eat, but it got you away from animals that would probably hunt you. And it rewarded you by the ways that your brain would operate, the high release of cannabinoids, endorphins, other kinds of brain chemicals and neurotransmitters that produce a sense of well-being and stability. So when you run, at least when I ran, I was a runner for close to 4 decades, the reward was less anxiety, less stress, being able to recover from the demands of my day by putting on my sneakers, my shorts, running into Central Park, and an hour later, it's like, what could possibly be bothering me? So we know that running itself is very rewarding as an executive, how it is to deal with demand and pressure. But I think for most people, you have to have a balance between aerobic and anaerobic activity. When you look at the science today, it's evident that doing weight training is critical to conserve your muscle mass. And as we get older, the term is referred to sarcopenia, where your muscles begin to break down as a function of corruption within mitochondria, within skin cells, and so on and so forth. So there are other means by which you can actually maintain your muscle mass as you get older. And I think doing both kinds of exercise, a lot less aerobic. I now cycle, but it also settles my brain. It allows me to think with greater clarity. And then when you're outdoors on a bicycle and you're taking in the environment, you're in flow states, right? So I think for any really good executive, anybody who wants to think well, anybody who wants to get around the subject matter of corrosive stress, being fit is really quite important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm a runner myself, so I'm totally on board with the whole running thing. Yeah, absolutely. But just for me, I relatively recently started to do strength training and weight training, which is something that I hadn't done before because I've always been a runner and I loved running. And then I just realized that the older you get, as you said, sarcopenia is a thing. And I think it's 1 or 2% per year that you lose of muscle mass if you don't do anything as you get older.
Correct.
So I don't want to be that. I don't want to be frail when I get old. So I better hit the gym and start lifting some weights.
Yeah,
right?
even though running was my go-to physical activity, I always did do upper body work. But never to the extent that I would run. If the option was hit the gym or go for a run, go for a run.
Exactly. Well, I never really went to the gym, so I just started and
There you go. And you can do it at home. Most of the physical activity that I do now, upper body, I use my own weight. I use home equipment, which you can take out and put away very quickly. And that runs the gamut from a home version of TRX straps to different exercises, again, that require using only your body weight.
Can you share more about your exercise routine? So what does your typical exercise a week look like?
I do something every day, right? So at this point, I don't have the body that I did when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s. Yet I'm still remarkably fit. So at least 3 times a week, I'm on my bicycle. And it's not like, hey, let's just do a little bike ride in the park. I mean, I go out hard and I'll go out for several hours. That I balance out by going to the gym, and I will do exercises using gym equipment. And I go to one of the better clubs in New York City. And then every day, no matter what in the morning, there are routines that include push-ups, includes my TRX, includes very intense breathing exercises, and then push-ups. I think push-ups are phenomenal. So if you can do 40 push-ups, you're doing great. If you can do 50, you're going to do better. And if you can get to the point where at about my age you can do 100, that's what you're looking for if what you want to do is avoid sarcopenia. I think the breathing exercises are also really important. They settle your metabolism. They improve what's going on with your blood flow. It's critical in terms of controlling the stress hormones within your body and the stress hormones within your brain. I'd say maybe 4 or 5 mornings a week, I also do an ice cold plunge in my tub.
And what kind of breathing exercises do you do? Is it the Wim Hof breathing type of thing, or do you do different? What do you do?
I had very severe COVID 5 years ago. By my bad luck, I went in for sports surgery and right after the lockdown. And while I was in recovery, I was in a room with another athlete who had flown over from England at the time. And I think that he probably tested negative when he flew over. Very few people understood at that point the fact that you could test negative on a COVID test, you'd still already be infected, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he brought over Delta Plus. So I developed a horrific case of COVID pneumonia where my lungs filled up with a tremendous amount of fluid. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital trying to stay alive, not even recuperate, to stay alive. So at the worst of it, I was put on a very powerful oxygen compressor. I was never put in a mechanical compressor. I knew then, I knew enough to know that mechanical oxygen compressors, if you went on it, the likelihood that you would come out alive was less than 2 out of 10 people. So I worked very hard in the hospital with the oxygen machine that they put me on. I left the hospital at 98 pounds. I don't know how many kilos that is, but I went from 150 pounds to 98 in under 2 months. So I had to reteach myself everything. I had to reteach myself how to exercise, how to walk, because my muscle mass was gone, and I had to teach myself how to breathe. So I taught myself. I already knew the Wim Hof approach. I studied with Wim Hof, and that was inadequate. So I immersed myself in pranayama, breathing technology, using different devices that you can use that are run by apps. For instance, there's a company called AeroFit, and they produce a device that mimics running up a mountain, going into a valley, being in a race, and so on and so forth. So I took it upon myself to teach myself different means of breathing, and I pretty much follow that pattern almost every single day. So when I was sick and I wanted to get better, I was, and here I was, having been a racer, a marathoner, an ultra marathoner, and after COVID, I could hardly walk 10 feet without being out of breath. So here we are 4 years later, and I'm back to racing, but a lot of it is due to how I retrained myself to breathe. I had to reteach myself how to breathe, essentially, right? And it's somewhat complex, but there are many breathing courses that I think are remarkable. There's, if you go on YouTube and just type in breathing, like, I don't know, several hundred people. And if you've not done any, you may as well start with Wim Hof. It's simple, it's basic, and it gets you started.
Yeah, I've done that for a few years. I
Sure.
haven't really done it recently. So sometimes it's just, I love trying new things, but at some point you reach like a complexity where you do, okay, I have to do this in the morning and then this and then this, and then your morning is just getting too long.
Sure. Well, I'm being mindful of what my needs are. So I get up
Yeah,
very early. I'm an early riser. I
me
never
too.
was. Again, after having been as sick as I was, I knew that I needed my mornings to do what I needed to do to reestablish a platform of strength. So yes, there are many biohackers that have their routines. I do my, because it's kind of like biohacking for dummies, by the books. Here's what you got to do if you want to be a biohacker. I do it because I wanted to live, and I wanted to recover my faculties, right? I wanted to build my business back. I wanted to get back into the world. So I do what I do because it empowers me. It empowers my biology. It empowers my brain.
Yeah, totally. Now, you mentioned cold plunges. So do you do quite the opposite, like sauna? Do you do sauna as well on a regular
Oh,
basis?
sure. Yeah. I've been doing saunas for same thing. I started in the 1970s. In New York City, there were several sauna destinations that you could go to. the very typical Russian bathhouse, of which there were several in New York where everybody went. There wasn't an Equinox in America when I started doing saunas. There was no LA Sports Club. There was no New York Sports Club. There were kind of raunchy gyms, if that's what you wanted to do. And then there were 2 or 3 destinations where they had these crazy Russian sauna rooms. And I would do them. I would go with my friends every week. We would do that on a weekend, on a Sunday. If you had a hangover, that was a great place to go. If you were aching from doing a race, that's where you would go. So saunas were very central to how it is that I manage the aches and pains and the ability to recover. But also, it produces a really amazing state of mind. And I'm all about the mood. So you can go to a sauna house here in New York. You can go to your local gym, which probably has a sauna. And there's sauna techniques that I'm interested in and that I've mastered, that when you walk out, you're also extremely clear. Your mind's very sharp. Now, if you and you control a lot of inflammation, there's many things that saunas, when you do them properly and for the right amount of time, have
What's the right amount of time?
Huh?
Sorry to interrupt you. What's the right amount of time?
A power sauna is at least an hour. Right? And you can do it in breaks. You do 15 minutes, break, 15 minutes, break, 15 minutes, break. You don't have the time to do that during your work week. But if I do my work day, then I hit the club, and then at the end of it, I do a 20-minute sauna. That's enough, 15 to 20 minutes.
That's what I do.
I may do that 2 or 3 times a week. In the winter, I'll probably hit the Russian bathhouse 2 times a month on a weekend. And that's where you're going to do your power sauna, right? But also you're going to combine them just like they do in Finland. You're going to do a Finnish sauna where you expose yourself to extreme heat, then go into a cold plunge. In Finland, they'll jump into a nice lake right next to where they may have their sauna set up, a stream for all I know, but the temperature is really cold. So that contrast in terms of doing hot, cold, does immense things for your immune system, states of mind, the human heart. We now know that you can reduce the risk of heart disease by doing extreme hot baths and saunas on a regular basis. I think some studies, especially done by Rhonda Patrick, who's a very well-known PhD in nutritional science, how it is that you can control heart disease by reduce your risk of heart disease by about 30% by consistently doing saunas and hot baths.
Yeah, it's great for your vascular system because you dilate your blood vessels and then you contract them again. And it's a great exercise for your vasculature system. So that's great.
Correct.
And also, I think I've seen studies where they have shown that with sauna alone, you can increase your growth hormone level by up to 16%, which is great if you want to build.
That's correct.
So that's awesome.
That's correct. But there are any number of ways where you can increase your growth hormone levels without using growth hormones. If you work out, you're going to increase growth hormone. If you do saunas, you're going to increase growth hormones. If you use certain peptides, which are a very unique and very novel kind of product, you can use them to actually increase your growth hormone too. So we've got pathways to do it. And yes, saunas are the simplest one of all. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you're familiar with Dr. Andrew Huberman, Huberman, I think, was one of the first ones to actually point out on one of his podcasts that saunas will lead to growth hormone release.
Yeah. So many interesting ways to hack your biology.
Yes. So many ways to live well.
Exactly. Can you tell us about your supplement routine? What does your supplement stack look like? What are you taking? Why are you taking it? How often do you cycle?
Um, I cycle every day. I use a lot of supplements, and I
Ooh.
take a lot in terms of the volume of what I'm consuming in a day. Um, I don't advocate it for everybody. I'm very disciplined. I know what
Mhm.
I'm after. I'm using supplements that regulate inflammation. Again, having been a runner often to excess, I do deal with sports injuries, and I do want to control inflammation from those injuries. I'm interested in increasing my muscle mass. So there are products that I use for that, everything from creatine
Mhm.
to actinium. There's others that will build your muscle mass. And in your 70s, I'm cautious to make sure that I've got the routines to do that. Hydroxymethylbutyrate, HMB, is a muscle builder. So I'm stacking muscle builders that I
Mhm.
take every single day. There are the supplements that actually may have an impact on the speed at which your DNA is corrupting or its potential to make errors. So there are supplements that I use for that. Everything from blueberry extract to quercetin to fisetin. So I could go on and on and on. And I'm also interested in keeping my brain working
Mhm.
well. So right there, I've got an assortment of well over about a dozen supplements,
Wow.
unique products that I'm rotating through a week. So
Mhm.
everything's rotation. The microbiome has to be kept at top condition, given that the microbiome, the bacteria in your bowel, regulate your immune system. Probably about 70% of your immunity is conducted and regulated by the bacteria in your colon. So there are multiple probiotics that I use to achieve that.
Mhm.
And there are prebiotics, there are postbiotics. So I'm rotating. Now, again, I've put in a lot of work, a lot of time, but to the extent that you regulate your microbiome, you're going to regulate also aspects of how you're aging. I'm
Mhm.
not necessarily interested in being immortal. I just
Mhm.
don't want to die from anything stupid
Yeah.
anytime soon. Right? So
Yeah.
to the extent that that I'm gonna stick around, I want to stick around in really great shape. And if you stick around the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the likelihood is that there will be greater breakthroughs in science, in functional health, in precision medicine, in genetics that will give us great capacity to perform when we're in our 70s, 80s, and 90s as though we were in our 30s or 40s. So I'm looking to achieve that right now. So far, I seem to be doing pretty well.
That's awesome. What are your predictions for the next 5 to 10 years? What's on the horizon? What are you really excited about?
Um, there's a double-edged sword, let's say, with AI and how AI will be shaping the future of medicine, but it will be shaping the future of everything that we're interested in.
Mhm.
So if I'm interested in anti-sarcopenia, anti-dementia, pro-personal performance excellence in terms of my discipline, then we're going to have breakthroughs in how you can deal with CRISPR technology in your genetics and be able to regenerate yourself in ways that we still can't even conceive of. So this is all on the horizon. There are great thinkers talking about this. Craig Ventnor, who's the head
Mhm.
of the Bucks Institute. What they're doing there is remarkable. I mean, for women that are infertile and would like to have their own children, I'd say within the next 10 years, they will likely have the access to um, manufactured ovaries in the
Wow.
laboratory. So we're looking at the end of things like menopause.
Mm.
in the way that it is daunting for many women now. And I think the fact that you can extend high biological performance so long as you're alive. Peter Attia talks about this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he may not be interested in living forever. He just wants to make sure that if he's alive, that he's functioning as well as possible at that moment. What we refer to as infirmity compression. So we can push everything bad that could happen to a body into the last days of your life, and then you die.
Yeah, that would be ideal, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good to me. Now, entrepreneurs often try to outwork their biology until biology wins, because it
Sure.
usually does. Now, let's talk about that relationship between ambition and longevity, because you have worked with people at the very top of their fields, CEO, artists, performers. What are the most common invisible costs of high achievement that show up in, say, their blood work or physiological markers that they might not think about?
I'd say you start with a lack of peace of mind, right?
Mm.
So whether you're a male or a female and you're an entrepreneur, and I was one of these people. Um, I was extremely aggressive when I built my company and what I was looking to achieve. And I would do it often at the cost of my peace of mind, tranquility, happiness, joy. You know, you're driven to achieve. And there may be a period in your time where really that's what you need to be doing. I think in the world that we live in now, and you'll hear people say this all the time, you're dealing with hyper competitive environments. So
Yeah.
whatever you're looking to get into and be an entrepreneur in, there's like I said, like the story about predators. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you were out hunting, you likely had 400 or 500 other hunters with equivalent talent going for that one piece of protein and fat. And it's no different now. The marketplace is saturated with everything. Um, we're now entering an epoch where AI could be displacing many people in terms of work. Entry positions are becoming more difficult. The entrepreneur has now to be better prepared physically than I think I was in my era.
Mm-hmm.
So for you not to be physically fit to begin with, for you not to have an adequate amount of sleep, and if you don't, you need to remedy that. There's technology that you can use to actually measure the quality of your sleep and see if it's suitable for what it is that you're doing in terms of your work, right? Like the Aura Ring, I'm wearing one. I think Whoop is another one that people really do love. There are others produced by Garmin and so on. There are even tools that you can use that can reset your neurochemistry so that you sleep better. There are dozen devices in the market now that if you have a hard time sleeping or you wake up at 3 in the morning trying to solve the problems of the universe, that you find the means by which you can fall asleep quickly, stay asleep as long as possible. If you wake up, how is it that you don't by default start thinking and talking to yourself, but just fall asleep again, get the right amount of sleep, and then get up well rested? The sleep component is probably more important than what you eat, right? Maybe
Oh,
even
really?
more important than working out,
Wow.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
you got to know that. I mean, if you're sleeping 5, 6, 7 lousy hours, and first thing that you do is you open your phone and you're looking at emails and then text messages, and then you're on social media, you're doing damage. You're doing damage right off the bat. So you need to find uh, how it is that you're conducting yourself in your private life. So when you go do your work, you're well equipped. You're biologically well equipped. What we call biological autonomy. That you're not falling asleep at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because you didn't sleep well. And you need to have another cup of coffee, and come 5, 6 o'clock, all you want to do is just go home, flip on your iPad or watch Netflix, and just, go as quiet as you can because of the amount of noise that you deal with during your workday. You got to take joy in what it is that you're doing at work, or if not, you need to consider the means by which you can experience a sense of fulfillment. So come 5, 6 o'clock or 8 or 9, that you feel fulfilled, grateful for how the day went. How successful were you in achieving your goals for the day? And so all of these things that you want to achieve in terms of your work and how well you perform and how well your enterprise may do pivots in large measure on the condition of your body. Right? Mindfulness, I think, is really important. I think finding the means by which you can go quiet and quiet your mind, if not through a meditative practice, then using a meditative tool that you can use that can allow you to drop into states of meditation. There's a lot of repair takes place there. How well your brain can regenerate itself between sleep, mindfulness, meditation. And these are all tools that I think make you a more potent executive, right? A more potent CEO, a more potent leader.
Totally. What metrics do you recommend that people track to see if they are still on the right track?
I think definitely sleep. I think using a device like Whoop or Aura, that's plenty for me in a day. And then the ones that allow me to measure my metrics when I work out. So I've got an Apple phone, I've got the health app, and they all communicate. So at any point in the day, I can actually see my heart rate. I can see if I've gone into a very high state of stress. So I'm measuring all of this data because I want to stay within a certain band, but that's me. So yeah, I'll turn my phone on in the morning, but the only thing I'm going to look at between when I wake up and I go make my first morning beverage is my Aura app. Like, oh, okay, these are pretty cool scores. And then what do I need to do to hit that, ding that score one more time? Because on days where I sleep better and the quality of the sleep has been exceptional, the way that I work turns out to be really quite exceptional also.
Well, I tried sleep tracking for a while and I had to stop because I started to stress about the scores and then it made me even more stressed. So I stopped doing
plenty
that.
of people do. Plenty of people do stress over that. But I'm very quiet with myself. I'm not at war with myself, and I've learned how to manage certain bad feelings that are just not necessary. If I have a shitty score with my Aura ring and I look at it, I just kind of like, okay, well, on to the next thing. There's the challenge is then to find out how do I improve. And by default, we tend to go to the worst outcome. It's just the way the human primate brain is wired, right? So that's why meditation is so important, so that you're not defaulting to worst possible outcome.
True. Do you track things like heart rate variability and VO2 max, or are those scores that you don't?
Yes, HRV is a sign of how well you're handling stress.
Yep.
Right. And if your HRV is when I got out of the hospital with severe COVID and long haul COVID, I went from having an HRV that was in the 60s and 70s to below 10 on most days, right? So I knew that my body was coming apart, right? And to start to do the things that would get my HRV up, including working with different devices that you can use that are on the market, certain biohacking tools like vagal nerve stimulators, the one that you can either use on your neck, cervical, or on your ear. These are all really good at beginning to bring the overstimulated sympathetic nervous system down, and your HRV goes up. So HRV becomes very important in terms of determining what's going on with how you're behaving during your day, during your work day. VO2 max is critical so that you know what physical condition you're in. So you can measure VO2 max with your Apple Watch very easily, right? And more importantly, you want to know that you can hit very dramatic VO2 levels when you're working out, and you're like, this is pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to see those numbers go up.
Sure, there you go.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we go? Any more biohacking tips for the rest of us?
Sure, I think wisdom is really critical. I think reading. It's appalling that in America, 4 out of 10 people last year read one book. I don't know what the other 60% read, if anything. So there's so much good thinking that's going on. To be a better human being, to be a better executive and a better entrepreneur, that you expose yourself to new thinking all the time is very, very important. The accrual of wisdom. And I think being well aware that if you want to live a long life, you better take care of the planet at the same time. I don't think it's any more kind of like, hey, yeah, the climate, we need to do something about the plastic. It's beyond that. There's the level of contamination that all of us are living with in our bodies. I think the estimate is we have the equivalent of a teaspoon of microplastics in our brain, never mind our body. Right? And so becoming aware of what's occurring environmentally, the meta crisis that the planet's in and your place in it. What's the point of living long if we may not be, if the planet may not be around?
True.
Right? Why are you putting all your efforts in building a company if your children or grandchildren may not enjoy your legacy? Things like that, Claudia.
Sustainability. So
Correct.
Important. So important.
Correct.
So, last but not least, where can people find you online if they would like to learn more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, our website is simple. It's oz@ozgarcia.com, oz@ozgarcia.com. On Instagram, I'm at Oz Wellness, OZWELLNESS. And I'm on LinkedIn also, I think also under Oz Wellness. I'm off Facebook. I won't go near TikTok.
That's good. I totally understand that.
I got enough social media going on.
Wonderful.
And also they can go to Amazon and look at my books.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for talking today. And thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Claudia. This is terrific. You're awesome.
Thank you. So keep up the great work. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye, sweetheart.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.